And what is the date today?
26 of October 26.
Oh, I can't even believe it's October 26 to the Board of Clackamas County Commissioners Issues and Administrator Update. Gary, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. We will start today with wildfire relief proposal. Tammy Little, our county assessor, Stephen Mack, county counsel, and it looks like Bronson as well. Bronson Rita, deputy assessor, will come forward. There's a memo in your packet. And so when you're ready, team, and Kathy Rastetter, county counsel, come on down. Whoever would like to start, please go ahead.
Morning, folks. Stephen Madcore, County Council, here with Kathleen, Tammy Little, the assessor, and Bronson Reuter. We have before you a draft or some legislation, which is Senate Bill 464. It was the last legislative session. Apparently, Clackamas supported it, as well as Marion County. And what it does do, it allows for some tax relief for those properties that were affected by the wildfires. If the board were interested in pursuing this, you need to adopt a resolution by November 9th. That's why it's before you on kind of an expedited basis. And the resolution would identify that property owners have a period of time in which to apply to the assessor for tax relief, which I believe is 1/6 of the assessed value is what would happen to it. To date, we don't know the dollar impact on the county tax revenue. We do know that it would cost a lot in terms of staff, time, and resources for the assessor's office to evaluate these proposals. And in addition to that, I think it's important to point out, and Kathleen can do that as well as Tammy, is that a lot of properties affected by fire already were provided some level of tax relief. Kathy, can you speak to that?
Yes, Commissioners, as the materials stated, that there are 78 properties, and they provided you a map that did get property tax relief under a different bill, and there has been actually a statute in existence for years that provided property tax relief to homes that are destroyed. So the new bill was in addition to that, and these properties would be eligible for that relief or may have already gotten it. Tammy can confirm that. But so this bill that is before you today, if you wanted to do a resolution, would be on top of that. They've already received relief or are eligible for tax relief, those 78 properties that were on that map. Have they received it already, Tammy?
That's correct. The 79 properties that suffered loss in real market value, they have already received their property tax relief. This would be in addition to that. They would receive 5/6 of their 2020 tax back. It is different than the revised bill for property tax relief, which gave them additional relief beyond what the previous law was. And it is one going forward, so any future loss from fire would receive that same calculation. This is in addition. On top of that, they run concurrently. It would be additional relief for these property owners.
For years going forward.
For the 2020 tax, they would receive additional relief on top of what they've already received, which brings up concerns such as inequities for other property taxpayers and for
what inequities? If your house burned down, it burned down. So this is my thinking on this. I have been in contact with people up in South Clackamas County who still have not rebuilt. And if they get tax relief for 1 year, that's not going to be adequate. Will this Senate Bill 464 allow tax relief for future years until they are completely rebuilt and made whole?
For future years, if their home was destroyed, the value of that home is removed from the tax roll going forward for future years until it's rebuilt. And then
we do that? Now, I'm confused. Do we do that at the county level, or is that subject to what we do in 464 through a resolution process?
We do that at the county level. It's under current statute already happened.
So I guess what my overall question is, what is the benefit for us doing a resolution, number one? Number two, yes, Clackamas County supported this fire relief legislation, thinking that we would be we would need it, we would be more severely impacted. Of course, we're going to support this, this legislation from the last legislative session. You know, that's not an issue. We understand that. So I think our support of that bill is fine. I think this action you're asking for us now does not negate our support of that bill. Correct, Stephen?
Yes, I would say that's correct. Not to be lost, though, there's two other bills that are timber and fire related, and those are 2247 and 5006, which is a county reimbursement component. Those are not before you today because they don't have the urgency that this one does have, which is a resolution by November 9th. What this speaks to, though, this isn't somebody's house burning down. This is impairment of access to property because of access due to road closures, water service, sanitation service, electricity, or telecommunication services, geared more towards those communities in Marion County that were entirely decimated, Mill City, Detroit Lake,
right.
And also word is that it's timber related as well. If you don't have access to your timber lot, or if your timber lot got decimated by the fire, you would be entitled to the 5/6 tax break that this legislation offers. And what Tammy's, or what the assessor's map points out, is we have pockets of 72 to 76 parcels of property that are scattered around the county that are in your packet. They're not isolated communities like Detroit Lake or Mill City. And that's going to be the logistical challenge for the assessor's office to ascertain what are we talking about in those various pockets here. So they have remained neutral on it. I think as the assessor's office has remained neutral, I think as deferring to the board, because it's your call and you did support it. I will say on their behalf, it's going to require a lot of staff time for them to do it, and it will cut into the county's assessed value and tax receipts for the forthcoming year.
Well, it might. You know, it's a loss. Paul, you're up.
Yeah, so I think I understand the purpose of this bill, and I think on the pros and cons, I think just to echo what Mr. Madcore just said, number 5 there on the cons, this bill was intended to help isolated communities in Marion County. Clackamas County does not have isolated communities that were decimated by the 2020 wildfires. So I'm gathering it's the ancillary impacts, not just their property, the ancillary impacts that inhibit either economic recovery or whatever, rebuilding and so on. So we don't have that situation in Clackamas County. So of the 3 pieces of legislation, which one is the one in which Clackamas County residents would rightfully be able to subscribe to or benefit from of the 3 bills?
As the assessor pointed out, there is already existing legislation that provides tax relief for houses that were impacted by the fires. And also, I believe 5006, Tammy, correct me if I'm wrong, will allow for state reimbursement to counties affected by that. That's not in front of you yet, but it will be soon.
So what does that mean? Does that mean that any financial loss the county would suffer would be reimbursed by the state?
I wish it were so. But, yeah.
You wish it was so.
I wish it were so.
But it's not so.
I don't believe it's that so. Tammy, can you speak to that?
The 5006 is for the counties affected by the emergency declaration by the governor, and the loss in prorated tax that was refunded will be reinstated to the county. And we will bring that before you within the next couple of weeks. But there are dollars that were allocated to the 6 counties that were impacted, and that is separate. It's dollars coming back from the state for counties that suffered in these losses.
Okay.
And like she said, it's prorated. It's not going to be a dollar for dollar, but we are going to try to take maximum advantage of that.
Yeah, and the other question I had related to this was, what is the financial impact to the county if we were to act, on 5006?
But we're not considering that today. We're doing 464. We don't know the impact
Okay,
of.
maybe it was 464 I'm referring to.
Yeah.
What are the financial impacts?
Right.
The numbers are unknown. The 79 properties that we know about, we would refund 5/6 of their 2020 property tax, so it would double what we've already provided in relief under current statute for those homeowners. It depends on how the resolution is written, and the the map itself, because there are many unknowns. It also includes the land in this bill. So potentially, the amount could be significant, which will impact all taxing districts in the county.
And that's
Okay.
another point to remember. The county gets what, 17 cents per dollar out of property tax received? The rest go to your fire district, to your school district. Schools get the majority of it, your 4-H district, your library district. So this is going to have countywide consequence, not just to the county general fund.
Commissioner Fisher?
So I'm just confused on the 5/6. You say in addition to what they've already received. What have they already received?
Under current law, there is a statute that allows for a proration of tax for an act of God or a loss due to fire. And there was some legislation in 2231, I believe it is, that added some additional relief by the way the calculation is made on that proration of tax. So we processed all of ours under that, once that new legislation had passed, to allow the greater amount of relief. And that work has already been done. They've already received refunds. And that is a change that will be going forward and remain in the law for any future loss or act of God that people would get a proration of their tax.
So
This is in addition, 464 is in addition to that current law that would allow not just a portion, the ratio of the loss in real market value that ratio applied to the assessed value is the proration that was allowed, so it depended on the loss. In 464, if you're within this boundary and qualify for a disruption in services, you would receive 5/6 of your tax bill refunded to you. So it's potentially very significant amount of money that
So
would be refunded.
Is it possible that they would be receiving money? I mean, it seems that if there's already been a calculation done and they've already been credited, that's how I'm looking at what you're saying, under the current laws, then they may.
This is in addition to that current
So
law, and they
would we
would
be paying them money?
They would get
Potentially
the
so.
higher amount.
There's a provision for a refund in the statute as well.
So they could get more money than they would have
They would
actually
get additional
owed.
relief, yes.
You said a disruption in services. 464 is a disruption in services. And please, I'm sorry for being thick-headed. Explain again what those services are.
It means the lack of any of the following for at least 30 continuous days, beginning on September 1st, 2020. Access due to road closures, water service, sanitary service, electricity, or telecommunications services.
Paul?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So things like water, so forth. And so no one's been impacted by loss of services, sustained loss of services. And so all those services are available to these folks in Clackamas County, alongside with all the service districts that provide, so that also would be impacted if we were to grant a 5/6 reduction. So I have a little bit of concern about that, knowing that the districts have suffered as well. So they would be impacted heavily. So I would be concerned about that. There's one other point I wanted to make. Oh, and that is, my question is, so let's say that of the 79 homes, let's just say 20 of them are still 2 or 3 years out from being, hypothetically, 2 or 3 years out from actually being restored. Are they going to be taxed every year, or are they getting a tax relief until they're back up and restored?
For the destroyed property, the value is removed from the tax roll going forward until it's rebuilt.
Until it's rebuilt. So they are getting that relief ongoing,
Yes,
rightfully so.
rightfully so.
Okay. So I'm comfortable with the current, because I don't think that we technically qualify for those loss of services under this bill, under 464.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, Commissioner Scholl?
The 79 homeowners who lost their homes last year, with the break in property taxes that they've already received, do you feel that they are content with that reduction? In other words, are any of them talking to you about supporting 464 in a resolution?
I have not had anyone reach out to me to support it. I couldn't speak to how someone feels. I feel confident that we followed current law and refunded under current law, we refunded the amount of proration due to them, and it keeps equity in the property tax system.
It seems to me that what we've done has been appropriate and that a new resolution is not required. That's my opinion on this. Thanks.
I think, according to what I hear from this board today, we will not proceed with a resolution. I think we have concurrence in that. Keep us abreast of this new legislation coming forward. I do understand why 464 was penned, because if you visit those areas in Marion County, which I have, my God, the devastation is like nothing I've seen. And this bill is very important for that. So I hope anybody watching or thinking about, just because the county supported this bill, does not negate that support, even though we are not going to go forward with a resolution. Is that okay?
Well said.
Well said. We agree with you that had it been, it doesn't negate it, because had that been the case, it would have been different.
Right, and I think this county, as far as I know, this board will continue in our support of wildfire efforts to make communities whole across Oregon, regardless of whether it's in our county or not. Thank you for bringing that forward, Tammy.
Thank you. We'll be back in short order on the other two pieces of legislation.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to jump ahead in the agenda a bit because we have a guest speaker. Construction Career Pathway Project Update C2P2, Tracy Moreland from County Administration, and Brian Fuentes from Clackamas Workforce Partnership. I will give a quick update. There was a memo in your packet. And then I'll kick off. So commissioners, I am going to authorize, should you give me the head nod, an additional $50,000 to Clackamas Workforce Partnership for the work they're doing for us on the C2P2 effort. We've already granted them $50,000. The first $50,000 was from lottery dollars. The second $50,000 would be from general fund, which I do have in my administrator's fund in the budget. But you hear the update first and you tell me if you agree with that. Go ahead, Tracy.
Oh, thank you. Tracy Moreland, County Administration. Brian Fuentes is a program manager for our workforce board, Clackamas Workforce Partnership. He oversees the apprentice programs and was overseeing the funding agreement that you all signed last February for the one C2P2 component that Gary just mentioned, investing in workforce supply. Since February, and then the memo is in your packet. So the C2P2 framework has several components, but Clackamas Workforce Partnership is responsible for recruiting and retaining women and people of color into the pre-apprenticeship training. To date, there have been 8 participants, 5 women, 3 people of color. 5 have graduated from the program and 3 are still finishing up their training. And just a reminder, these are Clackamas County residents, and they are preparing for careers in the construction trade, which, as we know, are family wage jobs. Our county administrator is continuing the funding, or proposing to, so that we can keep working, supporting this fiscal year women and the BIPOC community to begin their careers. Additionally, the county has designated staff to serve on the Regional Collaboration Committee. We have 2 staff who are attending quarterly meetings with other C2P2 supporting agencies in the region, where we learn best practices and generate ideas on how to keep moving forward on the C2P2 progress. And our staff is also working to implement the other C2P2 components in addition to the workforce supply one, developing strategies with our contractors, anti-harassment, hiring, and the other framework pieces for C2P2. And did I leave anything out there, Brian?
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Brian Fuentes, he, him, Clackamas Workforce Partnership, as Tracy said, program manager.
Please move your microphone
sorry.
closer.
Gosh, thank you. Not used to working with a mic. So Brian Fuentes, Clackamas Workforce Partnership, and as I said, pronouns he, him. I yeah, I've been working with this project now for the last couple of years, and it's really excited and appreciate the time today, commissioners, and the investment that we're talking about.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, it sounds like a great program. Definitely have a workforce challenge out there, so I recognize the need. Is the dollars amount associated to a cost per person, or is it sounds like it could be, it's not oversubscribed, I gather, and obviously greater participation would be benefit. Would that require, is there a relationship between the cost and the people register or apply or involved in this program?
I think if I understand your question, so for these 8 individuals, the investment that was made worked out to be about $5,400 per participant. That was essentially looked at as like a scholarship. That only covers a portion of a pre-apprenticeship program. That a true cost of a pre-apprenticeship program per participant is around $12,000. So it's through partnership, leveraging, and just relationship that we're able to fund it at less than what it actually costs to have a person go through. And so that's what I think the advantage and the great, investment that the county has done is help us build those relationships with the pre-apprenticeship programs. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a what's the word? When someone gets not a sponsorship, but apprenticeship?
Scholarship?
Scholarship.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just
that's how we're looking at it. It's kind of
like
a scholarship. Yeah.
It's not a full ride, but
right.
It's a partial ride.
Right. Yeah. It covers things like tuition, fees, books, the cost of, the staff to do the work, and also things like tools, boots, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Martha?
No, I think this is a great idea. I think for a minimal amount of dollars, we're getting a big return on investment. So.
Well, I'm in favor for training anybody who wants to enter the workforce in the trades. It's always been a favorite program of mine in this time of workforce shortages in the construction in all areas. It's my hat's off to you. For board consideration, Gary, I see it's informational only. Do we need to give an approval for the additional 50?
It's symbolic, but I ask if you would vote to approve an additional $50,000 to Clackamas Workforce Partnership to support, on behalf of Clackamas counties, our effort on the Construction Career Pathways Project. It is general funds. It has been budgeted. It's in the budget, in the county administration budget. We can afford it.
Okay.
Okay.
I
so moved.
Okay, Martha moved.
Second.
Martha moved the motion to approve $50,000 for the Clackamas County Investment Workforce Pipeline. Commissioner Savas has seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Who's taking our poll today? Mary?
Yes.
Please take the poll.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Schull.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Any
you,
other
Brian.
further discussion on this?
No, thank you very much. We'll keep you updated, and we appreciate your support.
You bet.
Thank you, Brian and Tracy. I do want to recognize Commissioner Schrader, who advocated for this during the budget meetings back in May, and I told you, Commissioner, we'd find a way, and we did. So thank you for thinking of the idea.
Well, thank you for helping our workforce board with this.
Also, quickly, I'm going to jump ahead because it's tied to this apprenticeship proposal. Mike Besner, Transportation and Development, please come forward, and Commissioner Schrader. Commissioner Schrader did bring this forward before the board several months ago. If, I don't know, Commissioner Schrader, you'd like to kick it off, please?
Basically, I brought it in front, and we asked for an assessment from staff about how workable this would be. And I would like to hear what you had to say about that. And I do have some points myself, but go ahead.
Okay.
Oh,
Good morning, everybody. Mike Besner, Assistant Director of Transportation. DTD, West, BCS, and County Administration got together and did talk about it. There was a proposal submitted that we took a look at to have an apprenticeship program for Clackamas County, and very much linked to the C2P2 effort. We as staff, so when the board made the decision to join the C2P2 effort and adopted it, we had an approach, and the approach included mandatory workforce harassment language in our contracts, and then workforce agreements for contracts, I think it was over $10 million. We're still implementing that. So we feel as staff that we want to get that off the ground running successfully before we try and tackle something else large. The other thing we're doing is the regional collaborative committee that Tracy mentioned. I participate, Lynn Chacon from West participates, and actually Brian participates as well from the Workforce Partnership. In the last meeting, we brought all this up because we're seeking help from our partners who have a little more experience doing this and maybe further along. And we talked about if we're trying to achieve full implementation of this, what's a good order to go in? And so we're working on that with our partners as well. So while it might be having an apprenticeship program, we're not 100% certain that's the best blueprint moving forward. So we want time to keep exploring that with them as well. So to summarize, we'd like to complete the implementation of the items that the board already adopted when we agreed to join the C2P2 partnership. Not ignore this, but kind of go back to our committee and say, what's the right order, what's the right way to go? So that was our assessment.
Martha?
And I do agree with that assessment. I did talk to former Commissioner Ken Humbertson, who has done this, and what the initial ask was, I think, if I'm understanding this correctly, Mike, correct me, is to have mandatory in our hiring practices. Am I correct?
It was a mandatory program that was a little punitive as well, and we would actually, we might propose something a little different that maybe would be an incentivization if we came to it. But yeah, it was to include it in virtually all contracts, I believe.
And I did have a conversation with Commissioner Humbertson, and I did mention that we were going to get this report from staff and that we want to continue with what we're already doing. And that he did send me some other emails with other kinds of language that would not be mandatory. I have to be honest, I can't recall if I sent it to you folks or not. Did I forward it to you guys, Gary?
I think you did, yes.
I think I did. So I can have Tracy forward that to you, but the bottom line is, I think staff's assessment at this point in time is the best way to go. And then as we move forward with doing the kind of contracting and implementing this, we need to give them the time to do the first baby step for that. That's how I'm seeing this. I, at this point, would not say anything mandatory in our contracting processes that we would have to work up is probably the way we want to go.
I would totally agree with that. How is this being viewed from the people who do the work, the people who apply for these contracts? Is it going to be additional paperwork, gee, more government regulation, gee, more stuff, and if the price goes up? I mean, that's my concern. You know, anything that's mandatory and punitive, that would be a detriment. We possibly could turn away some good people in that process, Mike.
I think there are other ways to address it, Chair, too, with that.
Yeah, the bidding climate right now is very volatile. And so we're also kind of still surfing that wave right now as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of jobs out there to be had and few contractors, so I'm leery of going forward with anything that's going to put, I mean, I like the concept. Yeah. That's not the issue. But coming from a construction family and background, where my father had a construction company where he would consider government contracts, and he would read the contract language. It went in the round file. He says, there's no way that I could possibly do this and come out. And I think things have changed, but I don't want Clackamas County to be noted for more cumbersome, more paperwork. So whatever you can do to make it, make it easier. That. Yeah, Paul, you're up.
So, I mean, I'm trying to understand this. So could it be something that could be actually where if there's a scoring for an RFP process, extra points could be given? That's more subtle than it is to say I'm just trying to find a way that maintains the intent and the spirit of public contracting laws, but at the same time acknowledges and recognizes, those, elements like this that are important.
Yeah, I have no doubt there's ways to do it. We do least cost bidding, right? That's the law, and for most things, that's what we do, and it's written right into statutes. But there's ways to, again, you could incentivize it, saying, hey, if you do this, you'll get this bonus, stuff like that. And when we're done implementing all this, and we get to the point where we're told, yes, this is the next step, Clackamas County, then that's a time where we dig in and see what are our options to make it so that it can still be effective, yet still not have the negative impacts that we'd be fearful of.
I mean, we already have incentives like project labor agreements
Right.
on large projects and so forth that,
Yep.
certainly don't want to circumvent that policy, but this is an opportunity to build on, I think, the spirit of that,
Yep.
so to speak, is where I'm getting at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does to
Yeah.
me. Yeah,
And
Martha.
I look at it as first things first, and right now, we're trying to take the steps to do it. I like the idea of incentives as opposed to anything that could be more punitive. I do think that hiring apprentices and training them on the job is the way to go. And I think that we should just give staff the time to do this first piece, and then we can start
Yeah,
on the second piece of
I love on-the-job
it.
training. I just,
Yeah.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I think it's always important for us to have the lens of having public dollars
Right.
promote public good. And there might be other things that we might want to promote through our public contracting. There is a national nonprofit called Helmets to Hard Hats. And it's an apprenticeship effort to get veterans apprenticed into the building trades. And so that might be something that's not, I don't know that that would be considered woman or minority incentive, but it would be something that would be a value that we could have. So I'm not sure what the next steps would be around looking at how we, it's really systemizing a set of values through our contracting.
Yeah.
And I'm happy, my conversations with, courthouse is our big project that's happening, and there's
Yeah.
definitely that effort to be looking at that. That's a huge project, but there's a lot of smaller ones that happen, so.
And the
how can
courthouse
we
one would have a
incentivize that?
workforce agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
The courthouse has what, Mike?
It would have a workforce agreement since it's over $10 million.
Paul?
Yeah, so I got a question for Martha, and 'cause I just want to make sure I understand this fully, and that is that this wouldn't be perceived or in effect to where, I think the rigorous training and
Right.
apprenticeship programs that provided by,
The trades.
the construction trades
Trades.
in competition with, or or an apprenticeship program that is less than what is offered. I'm just trying to figure out how that is balanced. Is one, less or than the other as far as the skills and the training?
I can tell you my personal observations from it, and I do think, I know the community colleges have offered apprenticeship trainings. I think the union-sponsored apprenticeship trainings are, in many ways, far and above. I think it's their wheelhouse in a way where, you can get training in other spots like that, and it's worthwhile. But I think they just have it nailed. I really do. And so I would always advise, and maybe my bias is because I have two young men from my family who went through the apprenticeship programs with our union folk, and I think that they get paid on the job. I think they get excellent training. I think the infrastructure that the trades have pulled together for adequate training and, learning and really getting people out there on the jobs that you're getting a quality. So that's my personal bias. I don't know if that really answers your question or not, but I always directed youth towards an apprenticeship program by the trades directly if they had a choice. Oftentimes what I said is use your community colleges to beef up your skills and get some of that there, but then use it then to move into the additional training as well that you get.
Yeah, the union trades are just excellent. I have family members who've gone through those. I have my friends who had sons and daughters go through those, and boy, they're just outstanding.
Yeah. And I think the issue here that we really are just saying now is let's get this started, and then we can start looking at our contracts in a way that will not financially implicate us, that can help prioritize.
Okay, I think there's no action needed to be taken on this, Gary, just information.
And then we're not moving forward at this time on this apprenticeship proposal, but we're focusing on the other C2, P2 efforts, which does encompass this. That's what we're saying.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, Mike and Commissioner Schrader. Back to the agenda at the start, draft legislative letter, mediation services. There was a draft letter in your packet. Chris Lyons, Public and Government Affairs. Amy Chase Herman, Resolution Services. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chris Lyons, Public and Government Affairs, and I'm joined by Amy Chase Herman from Resolution Services. And we are here seeking your approval to sign on to a joint sign-on letter to Speaker Kotek and President Courtney requesting $2.5 million to specifically expand the capacity of the statewide community mediation system for the purpose of helping to address the looming eviction crisis. As you'll see on the draft letter in your materials, it's already been signed by a handful of entities, including commissioners from Lincoln and Benton counties. And since we put the letter in your packet, I know that the city of Gresham has already signed on as well. The letter is in support of one of your legislative agenda priorities of supporting funding to improve housing stability for low-income households. So I will turn it over to Amy to give a bit more context on the issue and talk about how this will specifically benefit Clackamas County.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, Commissioners and Chair. There's been a group of us around the state who have been working to get mediation included in a solution to keeping people housed in this eviction crisis. There have been, thankfully, some moratoriums that have helped people stay in their homes, but we've been concerned all along that it would be very detrimental to people once that moratorium was lifted if they all ended up in court. So we think mediation is a good answer to helping people begin to solve those problems early before they get into a position where a tenant is being sued for eviction and could possibly have an eviction record that would follow them around and make it much more difficult for them to be rehoused. So mediation programs, there are 15 of us around the state. This money would go to helping staff and also train volunteers. I think you're familiar with the fact that we train volunteer mediators to help expand the capacity of being able to provide services. And there would also be some of this money, I believe, that would be used to for public outreach so that people would even know that service was available and seek it out early to help provide solutions to these housing issues.
I have a couple questions regarding this. This may be a side note, but have all the state dollars been set aside for evictions been distributed in our county?
I don't believe so, but I don't, I'm not.
And there was a problem getting those out.
Yeah.
For
Okay.
rental assistance, that's correct.
So I think, here we have money sitting in the bank that's not distributed, but yet we're asking for more. I have a problem with that, seriously. That's not wise use of taxpayer money. If that money has been, because the governor has called me and said, Clackamas County, you're not doing enough to get those dollars out the door, what's the problem? Well, we hired some more people to do it, yet we're still having problems, and it may be a statewide computer system, I don't know. But that's the one issue that I had with this letter going forward. Secondly, the mediation program for these people who are being evicted. And I assume they're being evicted or whatever because they can't pay the rent, correct?
I can say generally yes. I think that
Generally, yes. Okay, let's say half of them. But yet, every time I go to a place, there's a sign hanging, we are hiring. So does this program help people find jobs, the mediation program? Are you able to funnel them to help them find jobs, or just do we sit down and mediate and try to negotiate not to pay rent?
those are both really good questions. I'm going to answer the second one first, I think, and say that some of the people who are at risk for losing their homes once the eviction moratorium lifts actually have been probably gotten new jobs. but they've got this backlog of money that they owe.
Got it.
And so if they go to eviction court, you know, and the judge rules that they're going to be evicted, I think they have 4 days to get out. And the judge can't say anything about prepayment plans or paying past due rent. They'd have to go to small claims to get that, the property owner would.
So would this mediation program help them in front of a judge?
Say that one more time?
This mediation program that we want the $2.5 million for, would that help people go forward if they're in, for instance, a foreclosure situation, but they've gone out and they have gained employment, they're working, but they still have an arrears. For instance, I think it's 3 months, for instance, a mortgage, and then foreclosure proceedings start. I'm pulling that out of the sky. Does this program help them mitigate that situation?
Well, that's what we're hoping. I mean, we're talking about both pre-filing mediation and post-filing mediation. One of them would occur without going to court, so the property owner and the tenant could to sit down and talk about how they're going to pay back what's owed in a way that works for both of them. And then if there's a post-filing eviction process, that occurs within the courts, and some of the courts are very interested in having mediation involved so that they can help bring agreements to the court, and then the judge can look at that as well, that they've already agreed to some settlement.
Great. That's really what I wanted to hear. Now, this letter is asking for $2.5 million for 15 different jurisdictions. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, well, it would cover all of the counties in Oregon, but there's 15 centers, and many of those centers serve more than one county. We, in particular, just serve Clackamas County.
Okay, that's not a lot of money per center.
Well, I would imagine if you just, just did the math and divided it up, we would probably be getting somewhere around $100,000, I would imagine. But until we get the money and we know how much it is and how it's going to be allocated, we won't know exactly how much Clackamas County would be getting. But it would definitely be helping with the state outreach. People would know we were available for this. We'd be able to have the capacity, which I believe we do now, but we also want to make sure we're training our volunteers specifically for this type of mediation. So we would use money for staffing, training, and outreach.
In addition to the 4 sponsors who have signed this letter, do we know of any other areas that might be considering this but have not signed on?
Yes, I think all of the 15 centers are working locally and talking to people within their own area of influence to encourage people to sign on. And so we believe we'll be getting more signers, and we're also, we know we're working with lobbyists both at the University of Oregon. We're working with Chris closely to move this forward.
Okay, we have a couple commissioners up. Commissioner Savas, you're next.
Yeah, I do know that, Chair, your one question about, a final order from a judge. I know there's a lot of procedures that, and a lot of opportunity prior to any kind of final order. So I'm relatively assured, feel safe in knowing that there are places where you can influence that when it's in the court system, if it will. So it's not, hopefully it's not something that drags on where it's a final order, because that's pretty late in the game. But going back to the distribution question, it seems that the metro region has perhaps the highest rents, in proportion to wages and everything else than anywhere. So it seems to me that, population-wise as well, that we've got probably a higher demand or need. So I would think that would be allocated either on a per capita or something like that, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. It sounds like it might be evenly distributed.
Well, it depends. I mean, I think that's a good question, and I don't think it's been determined completely. There will definitely be a conversation about how that would be allocated to different metropolitan areas as opposed to the rural areas, and that fairness issue is going to be right up front.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's my only question or concern, is that we get a fair distribution of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I want to thank you for pursuing this. It's like my mother used to say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. and asking for 2.5 million to potentially reduce the 3.3 billion in downstream costs based on evictions is an investment worth making. I wanted to, they got this in our packet. We cannot click on the links because they weren't hyperlinked here, but I got the report from the Portland State Homeless Research and Action that's referenced here. I encourage my colleagues to read it. It's really good information. I would really support the effort to sign on and say, look, this is important. We need to do all that we can to help people that are facing this issue, because it's so hard once you get behind to catch back up, and mediation can really help set the framework going forward to keep people from being evicted.
Yeah, any other comments from my commissioners? Gary, what's the action we need to take? Do we entertain a motion?
Motion to approve the letter, please.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Savas has moved to approve legislative letter for mediation services for funding of 2.5, and Commissioner Scholl has seconded, I think. Would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Schull.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Gary, what's up next?
Thank you. Next, request for a time extension of performance requirements for a property at 92nd Avenue and Johnson Creek Boulevard. There was a memo in your packet. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead.
Congratulations. Easiest topic of the day. So essentially what we have here, we're acting on behalf of the development agency. I want to be clear about that. We entered a development agreement pre-COVID on a piece of property over off 92nd and Johnson Creek Boulevard for its sale. We sold that property. As a part of that, we have a security deposit we keep to ensure it gets developed consistent with the way the developer had proposed it. The developer has submitted, and this is for hotels, okay? So essentially the developer has asked for an extension of that, which we support. The one clarification I want to make, there's an error in the staff report. It says an indefinite. I would not support an indefinite extension. I would support a 2-year extension at this point in time. And then if the conditions, economic conditions remain the same that we've seen over the last year, we can come back and revisit it, and the board can always extend it again. Yep. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Has this property been closed on?
Yes.
Okay, so Patel owns it.
Correct.
Okay.
But this is just a security deposit because we don't sell speculative properties. We sell it for what they propose to develop it for.
So the security deposit ensures that he develops it for what he said he was going to do it for.
That's correct.
Any other questions from commissioners?
Just what action is needed?
Yeah.
Essentially, we will redraft or amend the agreement we have with Mr. Patel currently and come back and propose it be added to consent.
Yeah. Consent agenda is okay, Gary?
Yes.
It is with me.
Yep. Yep. Just want to give staff direction to move forward to that effort, and then we'll come back to you for a consent agenda.
Correct.
Okay,
All
to
right.
move forward that way?
Thank
All
you.
right. Great. Thanks, Dan. Next, Enterprise Zone Employment Waiver Request. There's also a memo in your packet. Sarah Ekman and Cindy Moore from Business and Community Services. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt. I'm Sarah Ekman, the Interim Director with Business and Community Services, and I'm joined this morning by Cindy Moore, who's in our Economic Development Division and is our Enterprise Zone Program Manager. We're here this morning to talk to you about House Bill 2343, which was signed by Governor Brown on July 19th, 2021. It's now enrolled as Chapter 522 Oregon laws. The new law allows but does not require an enterprise zone sponsor to adopt a resolution relaxing the employment requirements otherwise imposed on authorized business firms for either or both of property tax years beginning July 1st, 2021 and July 1st, 2022, if the company reduced employment due to the pandemic. So Cindy's just going to tell you a little bit more about this option and what we're recommending, and then ask for any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt, Cindy Moore, Clackamas County Economic Development Division. So the North Clackamas Urban Enterprise Zone is comprised of 3 zone sponsors, so that we have 3 governing bodies that cover that zone. Clackamas County for the unincorporated area, the City of Milwaukee, and the City of Gladstone. So upon this legislation moving forward, we did reach out and talk with the City of Milwaukee and Gladstone, along with our Assessment and Taxation Office, to determine the impacts for existing companies in the Enterprise Zone program. So with that, we did determine that there were 2 companies that did not meet the employment requirements for 2020. Both had already paid their fees for the 2020 year prior to the passage of this legislation. So as Sarah mentioned, we have two options. One is to bring forward a resolution for the 2020 tax year, and the other would be to bring forward a resolution for the 22-23 tax year. And so we're thinking about moving forward for next year and what those companies might be facing with COVID restrictions as a report for this year. So our recommendation would be to carry a resolution forward for your consideration for the 22-23 tax year.
Okay.
That would also, just to be clear, that would mean that there would be no resolution for this past tax year. But with the little impact that we received from the companies actively participating in the program, we felt it prudent to be carrying this resolution forward for the 22-23 tax year.
Paul, you have questions?
Yeah, so is that overall everyone, or is that just on a case-by-case basis? I mean, how are we actually going to implement or oversee that?
Sure, that's a great question. So we have 5 enterprise zones across the county. The one that we're speaking about specifically, because we do sponsor it with the city of Milwaukee and Gladstone, is the North Urban Zone. And so it would be specific for companies participating in that zone. Each of the other enterprise zones would carry resolutions forward to their respective city councils.
Okay. So, but you think the exposure is light as far as the need to ease up on that requirement?
For what we saw for this past year, yes. And that could be, and this is, my staff speculation a little bit, but also in just working with the companies. Most of the companies that participate in the enterprise zone are traded sector businesses, larger scale industrial type uses. The impacts that we're seeing over this past year, more on the retail, hospitality, business to business, smaller shops. Right. And so that's where we kind of gauge where we're looking forward for next year. We don't have a crystal ball, but knowing that there may be impacts, this does, the benefit of that resolution for next year would be to capture any negative impacts for this year. Okay.
Thanks,
I can support that.
Yeah, Commissioner Shaw.
The city councils of Milwaukee and Gladstone concur with the idea to extend the resolution forward?
We did receive feedback at the staff level from both, correct?
And they approve it?
Yes, this memo they have seen, they knew it was coming forward to you today at the staff level, which is where our conversations were happening.
Okay, staff recommends that county wait until June 30, 2022 to pass a resolution covering the 2022-23 tax year. Gary, do we entertain a motion on this?
Just a head nod that you agree. It
All
sounds
right.
like you do.
Good enough. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Cindy and Sarah. Next, your business meeting agenda, Commissioners, for this Thursday, October 28, 2021. It's a 10 a.m. business meeting. Right now you have one consent agenda item, but we'll, with your permission, move all of today's requests to this Thursday's meeting, which will be quite lengthy. Other than that, you don't have any other presentations or board discussions scheduled for this Thursday. If you have any questions on any item, please let me know, and I'm happy to answer them or have staff answer them for you. Moving on, I saw Commissioner Savas has stepped out, so if we could jump forward to Chair Smith, potential joint city-county letter on traffic diversion due to tolling.
Commissioner Savas should probably
you're right. Okay.
on this. You want to just take a 2-minute pause?
Yes, please.
2-minute pause, folks. We'll be back in, how about 10:30 exactly? We will resume our county administrator issues and update. Gary, what's up next?
Thank you, Chair Smith. We'll next go to Administrator Housing Task Force update. Commissioners Schrader and Savas are the representatives. If you'd like to go ahead.
Mr. Savas, you're the numbers guy. Take her away.
Sure,
buddy.
thank you. I'm just going to, Mark, could you pass that around? Sure. I'm going to give you kind of a written copy of it's really a draft, but I'm going to try and talk through this. So if you'll indulge me, try to give you I'm going to call it the quarterly report, so to speak, or recommendation. As we kind of implement the ramp up of the supporting housing services as consistent as possible with the LIP. So since our last update, the Administrator's Housing Task Force has met several times to stay as nimble as possible as we ramp up our supporting housing program. On September 14th, we shared that we were anticipating more information from Metro and Here Together. What we received was an Eco Northwest report that was out of date and did not include the raw calculations or the resources in which they were derived. So that's what we were after. We didn't get there. I have asked the administrator to assemble a team of staff with analytical, statistical, and financial skills to project a month-by-month forecast for 2022. So January, February, all the way through that year. And that would help in preparing a recommendation for the next quarterly update, not this one we're doing here today. So and again, in order to more aggressively as possible ramp up the supporting housing services beyond the $14 million we're proposing today. So stay tuned for that. Clackamas County Supporting Housing Services Program is implementing the LIP both programmatically and financially as resources allow. For the public watching today that were not, I'm sorry, I'll restate that. For the public watching today that were not watching our business meeting 2 weeks ago on October 14th, in addition to prior supporting housing services, we approved a series of contracts worth $1.76 million. These additional dollars will provide case management, housing navigation, placement, and short-term rental assistance as part of our supporting housing program. And even today on our consent agenda, we even have more that we're going to be moving on to the consent agenda. Last week, Metro also told us that our share of the supporting housing services dollars is just over $300,000. This increased amount over prior disbursements is the result of the September 15th tax filing deadline. So it's not really an anomaly. We were kind of expecting one. Our modest projections were that would be closer to $900,000, but it's actually $300,000. So all the projections have been below what we thought would actually be. So this brings Clackamas County's total supporting housing services received to date, the disbursements, to $715,000. Commissioner Schrader and I feel confident and comfortable at this juncture to cautiously expand the program. Our first step as part of that expansion is to exercise the $2 million option on our advance from Metro. You'll recall the board approved taking a $5 million advance from Metro, but initially we only took 3 of that. So today the ask is for the other 2 to minimize our financial exposure in case so I'm going to talk past that. So like I already said, the September disbursement was a modest increase, but we're not yet to a place where we can go it alone. And taking the additional $2 million at this juncture will ensure that we can continue to provide these critical services to families as we enter the winter months and the holiday season. I want to thank both Elizabeth and Jill and Rod for their green light and advocacy for this next step to make sure we can pay our bills and meet the needs. Additionally, Commissioner Schrader and I request that the board consider applying for $2.2 million of the ARPA dollars to eligible SHS programs, namely the hotel motel sheltering. This will allow us to reapply $2.2 million to eviction prevention and outreach. This also would bring the supportive housing program, SHS programming up from the $12 million to just over $14 million. As you recall, we began with $10 million with a plan to ramp up services as resources are identified. As we discussed before, the hotel motel program was originally funded by FEMA dollars, which were narrow in scope, and has since transitioned to SHS dollars, which are more flexible dollars. I've been very clear that I do not support the hotel motel shelter as a long-term solution because of its substantial cost and the lack of support structure for vulnerable populations. For example, women and children that are free of drug and alcohol addictions should not be exposed to dangerous activity that exists in low-barrier environments. However, I do believe it's important to close the hotel motel program out strategically so we don't have an influx of people back on the street when ARPA funds expire. So there will be a ramp down of this program into something ideally better when we talk about sheltering in the near future. ARPA dollars, like FEMA dollars, are more limited in scope than our locally generated SHS dollars. By using ARPA dollars to support the hotel motel shelter program as a direct response to the need for non-congregate shelter because of the pandemic, we can strategically realign our limited resources to other crucial services that help transition people into stable homes. I'm happy to discuss this potential use of ARPA dollars now or at a policy session. In summary, if a team of staff is assembled to project a month-by-month forecast for 2022, that team would help to prepare a recommendation for the next quarterly update in order to ramp up SHS services beyond the $14 million. But we also need to realize that the long-awaited completion of the IGA between Metro and the 3 counties, originally anticipated to be completed and signed in June of this year, is still in negotiations. This has delayed our ability to implement the LIP and remains an obstacle in requesting another advance from Metro. As mentioned before, the IGA completion and subsequent Oversight Committee approval for our LIP are both requirements that Councilor Lewis identified as necessary prior to Metro considering another advance of $5 million if we wanted to more aggressively ramp this up. Hopefully, those advocating for us to do more will direct their efforts to Metro in expediting the completion of the IGA. So everything hinges really on the IGA and the final green light from the Oversight Committee. So, Commissioner Schrader, did I leave anything out?
No, I think it was really very clear, and thank you for doing this work. And also, I don't know if you want to see the line items, folks. I don't know if our colleagues have the last Metro memo. Did we provide this to people?
No, I didn't see it.
Okay, why don't we get copies to them? I have one copy here. Maybe I can get a staff person to make copies.
Yeah, Elizabeth forwarded it to everyone.
Did she?
when
She
it
got
was
it?
received, yeah.
Okay. But if you haven't read it, it is available.
Yes, I've seen that
Okay,
one,
I've seen
yeah.
that. Okay,
Yeah,
that's important.
Yeah, I have seen that. I thought you were talking about something.
But let's clarify I'd like to clarify the IGA a little bit, because right now, we're in an interim IGA, correct? Gary? Okay.
Yes.
And Paul, the issue is, under the interim, we could probably ask for another $5 million should we need it, but the problem is the messaging we're getting from Metro and the Oversight Committee is that won't be forthcoming until the permanent IGA is signed, correct? Because there's some confusion with that.
Yeah, so I think that.
That's what I want to clarify.
And Jill's not here today. If Rod wants to jump in, I'd welcome that. But my understanding from our staff, when they said we are implementing the LIG according to, as agreed, I think some people argued that we weren't, right?
Right.
And so it was contingent really upon some details as whether or not federal funding, previous federal funding in the base year would be eligible to be an offset in state funding, as well as can we use some of the existing dollars that we have of general fund and be able to flex that into rural areas, right? So we have those 3 elements, which are really key. And as I understand from Jill, I was talking with Jill, and I think she shared that with all of us at different junctures, that as the negotiations are going on, they've hammered that out. So it looks as though
That was looking good.
it looks as though the way the draft IGA is currently structured, that we're in a better place, and those are probably, it's probably safe to say that we are implementing the LIP correctly,
Okay.
just not having the full funding to do it completely. So I think those interpretations are clearing up, but to your question, you know, when I met with Councilor Lewis and in a number of conversations, she's expressed that we need to do two things: clear up that get the IGA signed, and that clears up. It kind of gives guidance.
The final one.
The final IGA.
Okay,
yeah,
right.
As she stated, and also then at that point, the oversight committee can look at it and say, yeah, you're doing it right. And once we have those two green lights, then we can then ask request for another 5 if we choose to do that.
Okay, I guess my question would be, if we're making progress, do you think that they'd be willing to give us the money under an interim? That's something we'd have to ask them, correct? If we needed it, we'd have to say, are you satisfied yet?
We could touch base with them and see if they want to change, loosen those requirements, but it was pretty clear.
Yeah, that's because that's where the confusion coming is. Yes, we can ask for the interim, but we're getting messaging from folks that, well, no, until, you know, that oh, well, we had this issue hammered out. And the irony is it's also getting services to the rural areas, which this doesn't necessarily cover the entire county. Yeah.
Right. It sounds like Jill and our staff have done a great job of assuring that we can meet that. But we don't until we see the thing signed. I think we're, you know, I'm pretty uneasy, and I think Metro is as well, as far as, well, even the oversight committee. I mean, I think what Jill expressed to us is that they like what they saw. They had good feedback at the oversight committee. However, you know, it's really, I think the details in the IGA and the interpretation of how or what the base year was and all that is really embedded in the IGA.
Okay.
Any further questions, Commissioner?
We can ask. I just want to know if, Commissioner Fisher, have you got anything to add, because you've been on the liaison to the team? Is this what you're hearing? Is this?
Which part? About Metro?
Well, essentially, you know, if we wanted to ask for another $5 million from them over and above the other 5 we've already had, they've been leery because of Paul's last point. But are we showing enough progress that you think that they would be willing to extend us an additional $5 million should we need it?
No, and I haven't asked that direct question, so I don't know.
We're going to entertain some comments right now, and Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Thank you. So I can say that the report at the Metro Oversight Committee yesterday was giving the Oversight Committees just a little bit of a preview of what they expected us to talk about, which was received well by the Metro Oversight Committee. So where we are now, from what I understand, is we are the money that has gone out the door for the contracts has gone to assist the people that are currently sheltered in the temporary sheltering to get them to more stable permanent housing. We have not yet sent out the resources out to the community to do the very important pieces of our local implementation plan, which is the case management, community outreach, and navigation. But these resources, with the extra $2 million advance from Metro and the ARPA dollars, from what I understand from Jill, I'm looking for Rod shaking his head, will allow us to begin the implementation of all aspects of our plan. And from what I understand, that is critical in how the Metro Oversight Committee is looking at what we're doing. And I'm very pleased, and I'm not going to speak too deeply about it, but from what we have discussed, as far as how the negotiations are going with the IGA, it's my view that it's really important to get that right. I know, Commissioner Savas, you want to just get it done. I'm looking at the long term of 10 years. I'm looking at all of the aspects that we need for accountability throughout all levels of this, and I really trust our 3 counties working collaboratively with Metro, with our legal counsel, in hammering that out. As I understand it, because we do have a short-term IGA, nothing prohibits us from moving forward and rolling out our plan. Now, another piece that I do not have the answer to, but just when you do the math and you look at what's happening at the state level, and that the kicker has kicked, and that there's going to be a 17% refund to taxpayers, I am concerned, and I asked Metro this, to say, hey, have you guys been looking economically at what's going on? And could it be possible that we could have an additional windfall of resources that we haven't, planned for or, put out to the community, or we won't be able to do it because we don't have the infrastructure? I don't know the answer to that. And I haven't been able to connect more deeply, but issue spotting is something for us to be thinking about, because our higher earners and our businesses that have profits over 5 million have actually done pretty well through this time. So that's an issue that I think we have to weigh all of that with the fact that we are entering into another winter and people are struggling, and we need to be mindful and thoughtful.
I'm going to say something now. Regarding the implementation of the IGA, we can continue to do what we're charged to do with the temporary IGA.
Right. That's what I'm trying to do.
In my discussions with the tri-chairs meeting I have a couple times a week now, we are more intent, and it's our intention is to do what's necessary to get it right for the long term, because it is 10 years. We all three are under the impression we can continue with the services of the money that we have allocated to us to do that. So I think we're okay. We're going to extend our temporary IGA that was decided on this morning to let our staff council with the other 3 jurisdictions continue in the negotiations, and I think we're doing fairly well with that. Regarding the $2 million from the rest of the Metro low and income, I don't have a problem with that. I do have a problem spending ARPA dollars, and I will oppose that vehemently. In fact, I will even motion table that discussion going forward, because this board has not met collectively to decide on the ARPA funds. That needs to come first, because I would submit to my commissioners, you have no idea what's coming down the pike for those ARPA dollars. We had a proposal this morning for ARPA dollars to buy health clinics, and I put a stop on that until we have a further discussion. We have possible future expenditures could be in the $20 million range, because we are not out of COVID yet. And I have been very clear, this board has been very clear, the process for ARPA funds was to support COVID efforts of our health clinics, to pay essential employees, and then reimburse our departments for lost revenue over the last 18 months. We finally have a figure for that last one, and I bet you folks have no idea. It is $12 million. And I bet that my commission has no idea how much money we have spent to date for this year's allocation and next year's 40 million allocation. So I'm going to table any further discussion on the use of ARPA funds, Gary, until we can get a session scheduled soon on that. And I think we finally, at the end of last week or yesterday, have some more clarification on the use of ARPA funds. Is that correct?
Yes, the U.S. Treasury announced last week that the interim guidance that no jurisdiction will be held, I forget the term, you will not have to repay funds if you spend them under the interim guidance. So they're releasing harm from counties and cities for spending money under the interim rules. So
what I would like going forward, I would like a profit and loss column. It's really easy. We have $40 million here. We have spent how much over here? And these are the requests for this year coming in, and we're just going to load it up on what the expectation for that is. We do not have to make a decision today, Paul, on the 2.2 ARPA funds to backfill this. Now, this is my concern about using ARPA dollars for this, to keep people happy, to keep the nonprofits going. I have some questions that haven't been answered. Gee, the nonprofits are so desperate for this money to provide services. What did the nonprofits do before ARPA came along? we have not created any more nonprofits that I'm aware of in this county to provide housing. So what did the nonprofits do before ARPA came along? Right? So that question needs to be answered before we move forward. Secondly, we give this $2.2 million of ARPA, and they will not be satisfied. They will come at us time and time again until the entire $24 million is exhausted from our ARPA funds, and I am not willing to do that. Commissioner Scholl?
Yes. Commissioner Savas, if we take the $2 million loan from Metro, how much time will that buy us for our hotel, motel, shelter program? Will that take us to the end of the year?
Well, I would word it differently. I would say the $2 million, taking the remaining $2 million advance would get us to the end of the year on a $12 million budget, on a $12 million LIP rollout, okay? This ask is to step it up. So embedded in there is this costly hotel, motel sheltering embedded in that whole thing. It was $5 million when we first approved it as a cost. Staff has recognized that they need to ramp that down because it is costly. So we all agree on that. Initially, that was FEMA dollars that was funding that. So I think there's an opportunity to use, I guess if we're going to waste dollars, I'd rather waste federal dollars than local dollars, right, on something that's woefully expensive. By doing the offsetting that with ARPA dollars, it frees up $2.2 million to get at the navigation and the outreach that Commissioner Fisher just spoke to. So it gets us to the $14 million, which was my minimum baseline when we hope my optimistic. I had three estimates that we would either be, or roughly, we had either the $14 million baseline or a $24 million baseline or 32 based on this disbursement model. And it's been woefully low. So we got the modest estimate for a rollout I thought was functional was 14 million. This gets us to the 14 million, even though we only budgeted 10. So we are ramping. Complicated answer. This is complex, but did I get to your question?
Well,
there's a lot of moving parts.
Yes. What I was getting at, Commissioner Savas, is that come at the end of the year, Christmas time, the $2 million additional loan from Metro, are we going to be able to sail through the end of December without any kind of panic?
Yes, on a $12 million baseline.
So if you don't get the 2.2 million ARPA dollars before the end of December, you think that we're going to be okay to the end of the year?
We'll have on a more reduced, tighter program, not having the outreach, not having the navigation, and all those other aspects.
And H3S is looking at reducing that program potentially.
Not the program I just spoke to, but the hotel motel program.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay.
Right.
So we have some place for those people to go.
Well, they're housed currently today. What they don't have is the navigation and outreach that
get them housed.
Would assist them.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Okay.
Something else I want to consider about funding that ties into this on for the hotel. Gary, if we have a really harsh winter, as what some of our meteorologists are predicting in the area, we're going to have to set up warming shelters and shelters for the homeless, because if it happens they're predicting possibly 6 snow events, and at 1 month temperatures dipping down into the teens. What money pays to get those people off the street into a warm, safe place?
We potentially could use some of our COVID funds, existing funds that we've already received from the state and feds. You could use ARPA dollars, or we'd use general fund dollars. There's some budgeted funds that H3S has already put aside for potential warming shelters or cooling shelters, but they don't have a lot, depending on the severity of the issue.
You said COVID dollars. Does COVID dollars mean ARPA dollars?
No, prior funds we've already received from the CARES Act that we've received at Clackamas County.
Oh, good.
And several federal and state grants that have come in from the prior CARES Act that we've already received.
So with that in mind, Paul, I tend to look at these situations, they're kind of the same. The weather's going to exasperate the homeless situation even more. So what I'd like to do, if we can get it teed up for next week, I want to look at how much money we have for the winter events where people are going to have to seek indoor shelter, and how that works, what we can do for that, if we can piggyback this along during and ancillary to our discussion on our priorities for ARPA dollars that this board has not had. So I'm very serious, Commissioners. We need to sit down and go over the expenditures, what we think of for the first 40 million of the ARPA dollars first, before we start piecemealing here, and nobody's bothered to look at the bank deposit to see how much money we have left, and I have. And I'm very concerned about this. I was very concerned about the expenditure ask this morning during the executive session. I'm very concerned about the email I got from a state representative says you need to spend your ARPA money on this and this and this, and everybody wants to spend our ARPA money, and nobody's looking at the balance sheet.
I agree with you, Chair. I just wanted to let you know I agree with you. I don't think we should make a decision right now about this ARPA piece.
I think that's a later session.
But I still think, but I would like to make sure at least we have additional conversation to keep it on the list. And here's,
well, yeah, next week.
Right. So here's why, though. I think this through. One of the things that we could do, because I share your concern with our nonprofit community, they have to realize one of the issues we're dealing with is these are one-time dollars. So it's not going to be a continuing influx of money. And we have to be clear about that anything that might go to this is just a one-time infusion. We could potentially think about what we could use it for, ARPA dollars internally for a program, I mean, for this housing piece with the hotel motel.
Why don't you just bring isn't that what Paul said? Just bring the, bring your proposals forward. We're going to get this scheduled. It's going to be a priority for me to get this scheduled to do that. I am willing to go ahead today with the other 2 million of the 5 million for Metro.
Okay, good.
That's fine with me today. Let's go ahead and do that. But I really think it's prudent on this board that we look at the overall ARPA spending, because you know what? We've already spent some of the second round of ARPA dollars on broadband. I don't know if you're aware. I know Paul is. Yeah, we spent we said we're going to spend 10 million on broadband because that was a priority. I think we spent we spent 25% of it now. We rolled over the additional 75% of the broadband costs to next year's allocation. So some of that's already gone too. So I want the years broken out, Gary. The 40 million this year, the 40 million next year. Martha.
The other thing, though, that I would mention to you is that let's say we did do the one-time infusion from ARPA. I'm thinking it gives us leverage to talk very directly to our city partners and ask them to get us some money to have some skin in the game. Because traditionally, we have always been the ones doing the social service safety net. And our cities are getting big enough, particularly in the urban area, and this is largely an urban issue right now. I mean, we've got different houseless problems in the rural areas that we are going to have to deal with cities of not considerable size. But when we have like Oswego, and we have Milwaukee, and we have Oregon City, and we have these other urban cities, we should be really leveraging our dollars together now. This county can no longer, in my opinion, in the 21st century, not expect that kind of level of fiscal collaboration from our cities. And I'd be glad to carry that message, because I'm kind of at the point where we can't do this alone anymore.
Well, and I have brought that forward too on my monthly chairs and mayor's meeting, and I said, well, what's your contribution? Paul, they hit me pretty hard last month, and I asked them, well, where's your ARPA dollars being spent on? And it was mom.
Well, that's why we have to push back a little, in a nice way. I mean, they're our partners, but I kind of feel if we put some skin in the game with this one-time dollars, they will have to. I mean, help out with this. We can't do it alone anymore as a county.
I agree.
The county, particularly in our urban areas, just it's too important, it's too big, it's gotten out of hand, and we're only seeing the tip of it here. I mean, really, up north is really bad. We have it here too.
I know.
And I will tell you, I talked to the mayor of Oregon City, and I'll be honest, I did not ask her for dollars, but they are moving ahead with their own program because they're not sure where this one is. But the other thing I found out that I thought I was very disappointed with is I asked her, I said, when the advocacy group here together, was starting this, did they ever do outreach to you specifically? There was like a silence, and they have a wonderful homeless program here in Oregon City that they're working on, but nobody talked to their chief of police, who was in charge of this and very involved in it. And that, to me, was the problem we've had all along. This was more from here to here. He would have been one of the first people I went to if I was moving ahead with this kind of a piece. But I honestly don't think some of the folks, well-meaning as they are, didn't know our civic infrastructure here enough to really know where to go. And we got a lot of our nonprofits, but this was bigger than that. And it has to be a broader, deeper civic structure in order to put this from the bottom up.
Okay, Commissioner Fisher, thank you for Martha. Go ahead, Commissioner Fisher.
Let you know, Martha, I was part of the connection of Chief Band to the development of the plan. So I'm not sure where you got that information.
From the mayor. So maybe you should talk to her.
Okay, but Chief Band has been integral in helping with this effort and is pretty important. So honestly, I'm concerned. I understand from Jill, and Jill's not here, Rod can shake his head. We need a $14 million allocation to implement all aspects of the plan. Is that correct? He's nodding his head. I don't care where we get the other money. Honestly, I think there's an absolute nexus between using FEMA dollars for COVID and ARPA dollars. If I would have been here, if Commissioner Schrader and I were not in Washington, D.C., at the time that ARPA allocation was made with the three of you, I would have advocated fiercely that we keep that option open during that initial round. I wasn't able to be part of that conversation. I think it is appropriate, and I think Commissioner Schrader is right. I think we need to work with our cities to leverage whatever other dollars we need for this window before the tax revenue comes in the spring. Okay. We have a very important...
Well, even though, if we even...
just let me finish. We have an opportunity here to really help people who are currently unsheltered. We will not do that if we do not increase the allocation. We also have a tremendous responsibility to the public that cares about this issue and to the taxpayers that are currently paying and will be paying significantly in April when those are due. So I encourage us all to walk our talk because we all care so much about this issue and figure out a way to get what we need to implement the plan.
That's fine, and that's what we're going to do. The opportunity is here now. The opportunity will be here next week, and the opportunity will be here the week after. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, so I think your statement, Chair, earlier, there's probably truth to that, but for a different reason, and that is that, when we have 24 million to implement, it probably won't be enough. And I would argue that it's not that it's not enough for any particular group or a nonprofit. I think the need is going to be greater than the resources are available, period. Regardless how much money this measure, 26-210, delivers to the local governments, ourselves, and so forth. So I don't think there's enough money, and I'm actually concerned, frankly, that money in and of itself is not the total solution here.
It's not.
And it's demonstrated to our neighbors to the north. They're putting hundreds of millions of dollars into that, and I don't think anyone can necessarily see a visible difference. And I think visible difference, or the visibility of what's out there right now, is really impacting a lot of people in a lot of ways. So it really requires us to be, I think, transparent, honest about this, and I think they also expect accountability, and I think they expect to make sure that every dollar is spent as wisely as possible. But they also expect results. And I think that's what the auditors, Metro's audit report was trying to point out to some degree. And that's going to be part, again, that's also embedded in the IGA, are the results. And we got to think about that. It's not just about getting the money out there. It's about the results. So anyhow, what I wanted to say was, and if the consensus here today is to wait until next Tuesday to approve or not the 2.2 million of the ARPA, I do, that's fine. We can wait till Tuesday. But two things I want to point out. Number one, whether it was when you were on your trip to Washington, D.C. or not, this guidance on ARPA from the federal government has been off, on, inconsistent. The most recent guidance that allows us to spend these dollars with the current guidance without penalty is a limited interim opportunity. So I would suggest that if we waited too long, that it may become ineligible. So I think the opportunity to strike is now or Tuesday or whenever, but near term, that we ought to just take this opportunity without penalty to assign that.
Penalty? I don't know what penalty you're talking about.
If the guidance in the future, Gary, could you explain that further?
Yes, the U.S. Treasury said last week that the interim guidance that they have provided on spending ARPA dollars, that counts as near final. So if a government spends money under the interim rules, they will not be penalized, meaning they will not have to repay the money when the final rules come out and if something changes.
Yeah, essentially, it won't be subject to clawback.
Yeah, next week will be a wonderful opportunity for this.
Yeah, so again,
I would like to have, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, if I can, yeah. So I just want to advocate that I think that's another factor into thinking positively on Tuesday about approving that 2.2 is just factor in that interim opportunity we've got without clawback. I already spoke to the point about, the metrics and delivery. One thing I would want to say to Commissioner Schrader's point about the cities, if they want to contribute some ARPA dollars, that'd be awesome, that'd be great.
Do we make it subject to?
And I don't want to go adrift here. It's not my point, but I just want to just plant this seed in mind, is that I have been very outspoken about displacement and policy changes that can impact that I think is making the homeless problem worse. And
what's making the homeless problem worse?
Displacement. And policies that lead to more displacement, right? We had the anti-displacement policy, I think it was June 22nd, I think.
We're kind of getting off
Yeah, I know I'm off topic, but I'm coming right back, and I'll be brief here. The point I'm trying to make here is that we've got on November, whenever, 2nd or 3rd, our land use hearing, and we are about to make one of so-called people believe around this country a mistake, in the sense that will lead to more displacement. So we have not implemented any. We had the session, but we haven't factored in some of the preventative things. So that's one thing to consider in this whole thing. And then it also leads to, again, back to the cities, is that are the cities doing the same kind of zoning changes that we are?
Okay, Mr. Savas, I appreciate this.
Goal 10 is specifically
okay, we got to wind this up and keep on topic.
For the cities.
Paul, please.
So, Gary, what do you need to complete the $2 million? Do you need a vote?
No.
Let's not do
just
that
a minute.
now. Let's not do that.
Look, we're getting, please, can we respect the chair and how she does this? I have heard you all. I'm trying to be accommodating to all of what you've said, but please respect the chair's duties. First of all, Gary, for next Tuesday, I will meet with you to have clear instruction how we're going to go forward on the ARPA dollars, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like a nice spreadsheet. I'm also considering that if any commissioner opposes any use of the ARPA dollars, I'm considering voting on each allocation separately. Let me take a look at the list, because it will give an out for each commissioner to voice their opinion and blah, blah, blah.
Okay,
secondly, yes, what do we need to do to get the remainder of the Metro money?
I recommend you make a motion to approve if you decide the extra $2 million from Metro out of the total of $5 million you are authorized to ask.
Okay. I move to exercise the remaining $2 million of the $5 million advance, the remaining $2 million to support the SHS program.
Seconded.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Savas to apply for the rest of the $2 million of the Metro, $5 million advance. It's been seconded by Commissioner Scholl, is what I heard. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none. Mary, please take the poll.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Schull.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
This is glorious. 5-0.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Gary, let's bring up for next week the discussion on the distribution of the ARPA dollars.
Yep, we will
And
have
I suggest that be a priority for next Tuesday.
Yep.
It comes up first, so we have ample amount of time to deal with that.
Yes, we'll be ready.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith. There are a lot of policy implications here that I don't think the board, on this sheet, that I don't think the board has been briefed on or thought through, and I think we need to when we're talking about sheltering. I know we were going to have a policy session. I have been hearing from some people, Chief Band is another one, talking to me about how well the motel system has been working to get people housed. I think we need to hear from staff as to what is best practice, what are the models. As a commission, we need to hear it all. And I would love it if we could get someone. Homer Williams has a proposal with modular pods that are pretty amazing, but out of that, we need to have the housing for people to go to. There's just a lot at play, and this is an issue for all of us to really study. So before we take a step, as we're going this way, this direction as a commission, with, we need to discuss it collectively.
Going which way?
Well, the issue about just phasing out using hotel motels.
Phasing out, well, it is expensive.
And there are options, if we pursue them, to reduce those costs dramatically if we purchased a hotel motel. And that was, it just decreases it substantially. And that's what the other counties are doing, Washington County and Multnomah County. And they house this, they get the services to that location, and it does work.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. You can always ask Gary if you need any more information. Also during our ARPA discussion, secondly, after that, I want a discussion on winter sheltering.
Yeah, we talked about that. That's coming, is it next Tuesday that's coming, that shelter discussion, or is it the following Tuesday?
Next Tuesday at Issues, staff will present to you all the things they're going to put together in the policy session to see if anything's missing. So it's the one last check-in with you.
I want some hard numbers on that issues. I just don't want, I want to know how much it's going to cost and where our money's coming from to pay for it, as much as we can. You know, if we have, you know, a prolonged winter event, Rod, you can do that, and Elizabeth, you know, get those numbers prepared, because the financial implications are huge right now, and we have to be very mindful of what we're doing. Okay, Gary, what's up next?
All right, thank you. Next, board rules, Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I have to leave here in about 10 minutes, so I got to, Gary knows this, and so I'll be back at maybe around 1:30-ish or so I'll be a little bit late for the second part. We're going to be doing the launch of the bus on-shoulder pilot project in Wilsonville, transit project. But I did want to just bring back, Commissioner Fisher, did you ever, I know you got directly sent the board rules or the draft with the edits and the recommendations. Have you had a chance to submit your own?
No, Paul, I'm sorry. I need to spend some time.
Well, we've been at this for a while, and I know that we've all had opportunity, but I'd like to get this moving, get this codified. Based on our discussion at the business meeting, I think, again, I don't want to I'll be very delicate here, and that is that if there's going to be a policy where we censor one another, I think there needs to be really a rule, some hard and fast rules about how we do an approach censoring one another, okay, as a board. And the same thing goes for unwinding any of that. So that's why I think it's important to have some rules in place as opposed to just making them up as we go. And I don't mean that with any criticism, but frankly, we hold others to rules. We hold our staff, we hold other agencies, we hold our advisory committees to rules. We ought to be holding ourselves to rules. And
Will
I think
you
that's
also add to that liaison duties?
if you wish.
Well-
I mean, I think it's embedded in there, isn't it? Isn't some of that embedded in that, in the rules?
No.
Because I think we already have some policy on that, but if you want to embed that in there,
I
I mean.
don't know that, I think we've just done it. But you said, about censoring and uncensoring, well, you have removing liaison duties and then restoring liaison duties. I would think that would also
Yeah, that would
qualify
make
for
sense.
this. Restoring
If
liaison.
it's not written, let's do it.
Yeah. I have, Paul, I'm going to be honest with you, I had some real angst about the original draft that came through because I think we need to be in keeping with the county statute when voters went to a 5-board commission. And they also at the time recognized that there needed to be a chair, and the chair has duties. And so any of the board rules that will dissipate or diffuse the chair's duties and to set the agenda and run the meetings, I have made notes on. And I've given those to Gary for consideration. And so Gary and I have gone over these board rules line by line by line, and I do have some exceptions to them. I'm going to say that right now. I think we can rule ourselves to death and we're not going to get anything done. I think a couple of things will be good. I'm also, when this topic first came up, I took it as a front, to be honest with you, because I was navigating many difficult circumstances at once. I came on as a new chair in January. We had Commissioner Scholl's situation, and we went right into our third declared emergency with the ice storm. It took us a long time to get out of that. And I was doing the best as chair as I could at the time under extreme stress. And I don't think my board members really can appreciate what the chair had to endure on that. So I did take it as an affront that somehow I was not performing well. And therefore, we need board rules to codify that behavior. So going forward, I'm going to be very boisterous on this. And if we don't get to where you want to get, don't take it as not being important. It's just that I'm going to remind this board, our citizens elected a chair to perform certain duties, and if those duties are watered down in any way, and what we want to do as board rules, I suggest we submit it to the voters for approval if they want to change any of those duties. So,
Chair, if I may.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to build on that, and I don't think there's anything in there that is contrary to any of the current ordinance as far as the chair's authority, right? There's nothing in there that's contrary. It's consistent with the current ordinance of what the chair roles and/or 2 commissioners' roles in setting the agenda. So there's nothing inconsistent. It's about some of the other policies I mentioned as an example, how we, if we're going to censure one another, what are the policies or guidelines to do that, as opposed to just making them up as we go. There's nothing in the ordinance or what the voters' intent was that somehow we would operate ruleless, and I think they kind of expect us to take the responsibility to, obviously we adopt ordinances and rules and guidelines and things in our normal operation of duty, so it's not, I don't think it's contrary at all to the intent or spirit of what the voters voted for in moving this commission from 3 commissioners to 5 or the elected chair. So, message received, but I don't think it's contrary.
All right, Commissioner Fisher?
Okay, so I just need a little history lesson. I'm looking at this document that's all interlineated, marked up, changed all around. Who wrote this original document? Okay, so Stephen, and then who, and it's really hard for me to figure out what it all says because it's all interlineated. Who is the red writing? So you crossed off things in red or put them in, and then Chair Smith, you did the blue?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. This is just I don't know that this is a lot of stuff I don't know that we need to do. it's so much of it is implied. I guess what I need to do for me to look at this is get a copy of what the voters approved and what our ordinance or code says about what our rules are compared to what this is. Because it seems like there's probably quite a bit of overlap. And I see that Stephen might be smiling with his eyes.
I might be, actually.
Yeah, I thought it'd be cleaner if they were codified. It was all,
What codified, Paul?
all the recommendations, the changes, the edits, all into one. It'd be easier to read, and then we could talk about it as a board and say, look at elements of it, because you made some edits, Chair, that, I don't necessarily agree with. Maybe it could be worded, but it'd be nice to know or discuss what if you changed it, maybe, why, and better understand that maybe there's a different way to address that. But, I know it's painful, but, we heard from our constituents when this was all occurring this year.
What was all occurring? What was all occurring?
The censure of our colleague, that we, where is it written? What are the rules? You are acting without, what are your guidelines and so forth. So, and I've heard this from, if you want to call it both sides of the aisle, call it both sides of the aisle. But frankly, I've heard from multiple people saying, where is it written? And I think we have a response. I think that's a responsible thing to address.
Commissioner Scholl?
Well, I like Commissioner Savas's idea of putting this into the rules. What it will do is ensure rational thought reaction to issues and eliminate emotional responses. So I concur with your ideas, Paul.
I would be curious to know what other jurisdictions do when they censor a board member, or what's Multnomah County doing, Marion, Washington County doing, and when they need to take action against a board member. I don't want to know what those are. I'd like to reach out to the Association of Oregon Counties, but Stephen, I think you've done that. And I think Stephen has reached out. And there's not a whole lot out there, is there, Stephen?
Not really. No. I mean, different jurisdictions have different processes, different rules. You are one of the few that has no board rules, no operating procedures at all. So you're Clackamas is a bit of an outlier in that regard.
So can we get board rules from not Clackamas, Multnomah, Washington, and Marion County to take a look at what they do?
We certainly can.
Okay. And maybe we should reach out to Gina Nickel at AOC to see if any other county commissions have board rules that they operate under, and just take a look at that. It's a heavy lift, but Gary?
I don't see this on your 10 priorities, Commissioners. There's a considerable amount of staff time you're asking for.
It is a considerable amount of staff, but I am not willing to go forward with something. You know what, people, if you don't like what the chair's doing, tell her. What is the problem? We removed Commissioner Scholl's liaison duties with a motion and a vote. We can restore those duties with a motion and a vote. We censored him the same way with a motion and a vote. We can uncensor him with a motion and a vote. Any commissioner, any two commissioners that wants to bring an item forward to discuss, you get to do it. I have never told a commissioner, no, you can't discuss something. I may disagree on policy. I tell you that up front. So I don't know what the problem is either.
Well, I think the issue is it really isn't one of our priorities, and we're going to get off. I mean, I think that this is something that we should all talk about together at a later date. I mean, I think it needs to be done, but right now.
I will take a look at the rules.
First things first, guys.
Yes,
Okay.
I will take a look at what
Please.
other counties are doing.
All right.
Okay, let's move on. Gary, what's next?
Chair Smith.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So is it by statute or how the rules regarding censure are codified somewhere?
No, it's inherent in your authority as the governing body. The legislature has a constitutional provision on the removal of somebody that offends there, as would Congress and everybody else, but yours is unwritten. It's just process. The question was, what can we do to a commissioner that runs afoul of their train of thought? And it was censure. You can't remove him or her because the voters have already placed him or her in office.
Right.
Yeah, so that's
But
inherent
all-
authority.
That's all written.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I would just be curious what's actually codified to look at what that says compared to, and where we need to fill in the blanks. Because what I understand accordingly is that the chair sets the agenda, 2 commissioners can put an item on the agenda, and that's just what it is.
That's what the code says, correct.
Yeah, and if there's other stuff in that code, then, but that's pretty much it, isn't it?
I think you
haven't
sent,
read
I
it.
think you sent that to us, Stephen, what the code was.
I can do it again.
You've said it quite a few times, thank you.
So
very
that's
much.
all I want. I don't need anything else. I don't want us to create work for people. I don't know what the problem is that we're trying to solve here. I guess that's my question when I look at this.
Well, if we want to restore any commissioner's liaison duties or undo the censor, we know how to do that, okay? I suggest, commissioners, that we consider doing that by the end of the year. And I will bring that forward, and I may have to make the motion myself, and I can do that. Okay, Gary, what's next?
All right, I propose we hold on the tolling letter until this afternoon when Commissioner Savas is back. Is that okay?
Yes, yeah.
Let's do consent agenda. We're going to book this out in 30 minutes. Team, Housing Authority of Clackamas County, your first, item 1, approval to execute a contract between Housing Authority of Clackamas County and Impact Northwest to provide supportive housing care management and housing navigation and placement. Contract value now to exceed $267,225, funded through Supportive Housing Services Program funds. No county general funds are involved. Rod, go ahead.
Yes, Impact Northwest will be providing housing navigation and placement services to assist households in locating and securing permanent housing by assisting them in overcoming any barriers they may be experiencing. They will link households to rent assistance vouchers programs, including the Regional Long-Term Rent Assistance Program, and will also link them to ongoing supportive housing case management as needed and to stay stably housed. There's no general funds involved in this agreement.
Any objections to this? Seeing none.
Item 2, approval of a 3-year lease of the Housing Authority of Clackamas County owned office space at 146 Malala Avenue in Oregon City to Central City Concern for the administration of the LEAD program in Clackamas County, generating lease revenue of $5,400 annually with an annual increase of 3%. No county general funds involved.
Yes, and just for background, LEAD is a pre-booking diversion program. LEAD allows police officers to redirect low-level offenders involved in drug activity to intensive case management tailored to the individual's needs instead of jail and prosecution. No county general funds involved in this agreement.
Any objections? Seeing none.
Sonia, is your card up for this?
No.
Okay. Health, Housing, Human Services.
Sorry.
1, approval of an amendment to a sub-recipient agreement with Cascadia Behavioral Health Care for residential treatment services. Amendment extends the term of the agreement to December 31, 2021, with no change to agreement cost. No county general funds involved.
Yes, this amendment extends the term of the agreement 3 months to ensure that there is no gap in service during the completion of a formal procurement process for these services. No general funds.
Any objections? Seeing none.
2, approval of a change order between Clackamas County and Ancrom Mosian Associated Architect for the Sandy Health Clinic project. The change order adds $21,534.64. New contract value is $314,785.64, funded through Health Center's fund balance. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, and change order was generated for 3 items. Health Centers requested Ancrom to develop and assist with furniture for the new building, which is greatly needed. 2, geotechnical monitoring of final soil issues on site was an overage of time for Redmond geotechnical services. And 3, the City of Sandy required additional dental plumbing permit fees. No general funds are involved in this one.
Any objections? Seeing none.
3, approval to accept funding from the Oregon School-Based Health Alliance for School-Based Health Center Program funds. Funding agreement is for $8,000. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, health centers will utilize the funds to establish a healthy teen relationships psychoeducation group that will create a space for teens to ask critical questions about their value-driven decisions in relationships, healthy boundaries, power and control influences on relationships, gender expressions, and how to impact relationship roles. No county general funds are involved in this one.
Any objections? Seeing none.
4, approval to apply for the University of Baltimore Combating Overdose through Community Level Intervention to expand Project Hope. Maximum grant award is $300,000. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, and again, this is for Project Hope. This project will include collaborative efforts between divisions in H3S and the community paramedics for Clackamas Fire, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, and several other community-based providers, including a peer recovery mentor and case manager. No matching funds are required if we go forward with this one.
Any objection? Hearing none.
All right, thank you, Rod. Next, Technology Services. 1, approval of a contract with Centurylink Communications to establish an updated master service agreement for external connections to the public telecommunications network and enhanced services in all Clackamas County buildings and offices. Total contract value is $840,000, funded through direct billings to departments, some of which does include county general funds and external agency buildings.
Go ahead.
Afternoon, Commissioners. With me today is Ron Sandler, who's our Telecommunications Manager. This is pretty straightforward. It's a renewal of our master service agreement with Centurylink. TS manages the infrastructure and services for communications within county buildings, but to receive or go outside the county, we have to have a vendor. Our vendor has been Centurylink, and what we're doing is renewing that contract along with a couple additional service enhancements. It's a 5-year master service agreement, and it's basically charged back to departments based on usage.
And part of this payment is from allocated costs, is that right?
It's basically how we direct bill back to the departments.
You direct bill, so it's not allocated costs?
It's not allocated costs, it's directly billed back to the departments.
Okay, good. Any other Mark, go ahead.
What's the increase on this $840,000 over the previous 5-year contract?
I think it's the same, isn't it?
The monthly charges, annual charges are the same.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, any other questions? Hearing none.
Great, thank you. Next, Finance. Approval
Keep us plugged in.
Definitely.
Okay, that's all we care about. You know, I don't really understand how electricity works, but when I plug something into the wall, I want to make sure the lights come on, right? Okay.
Careful how you plug it in.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you.
Finance. 1, approval of a public improvement contract with R.L. Reemers Company for the secure parking lot expansion project at the Central Utility Plant. Total contract value is $319,225, funded entirely through county general funds. Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director with the county, and with me is Stephen Bloomer, our Construction Manager at Facilities Management. And today, to expand on what Administrator Schmidt shared, is we want to expand our secured parking area for our service vehicles and equipment and our work area to include security fencing, installation of an automated vehicle gate, and electronically secured man gate. Any questions?
Yes, Mark.
Is that the parking lot right across the way here that you're talking about?
No, this would be right behind the CUP plant, our central utility plant.
Okay.
Where the elections office is also located.
Yeah, I got it, okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or objections? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Next, Business and Community Services. Item 1 through 5 are exactly the same, but for different entities, but I'll introduce them all one at a time. 1, approval of a contract amendment between Clackamas County and the Oregon City Chamber of Commerce to provide business recovery center services in support of the local business community impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The amendment adds $50,000 for a new total contract value of $155,026, funded through Oregon State Lottery funds. No county general funds are involved.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, so these contracts are to extend our contracts with 7 chambers of commerce to provide the 6 business recovery centers that we have. 2 of them work together to do one, and the others have individuals. So we did use lottery dollars to extend their contracts to take them through March of 2022. They have an impact report that we have reviewed, and they are having significant impact on reaching our businesses and helping them through the recovery process due to the impacts of the COVID pandemic.
Any questions or comments for the presenter? Seeing none.
Okay, so number 2, it's the same purpose. This one is for the Sandy Area Chamber of Commerce, adding $50,000 for a new total contract value of $152,320, again funded through state lottery funds.
And it would be my exact same spiel.
Thank you. Any objections? Hearing none.
Okay, so 3, the same topic. This is for the Canby Chamber of Commerce. Adds $50,000 for a new total contract value of $162,366 funded through state lottery funds.
Any questions? Seeing none.
Number 4, the exact same one. This one for the Lake Oswego Chamber of Commerce. Adds $50,000 for a new total contract value of $163,520 funded through Oregon lottery funds.
Any objections? Seeing none.
Number 5, the exact same thing. This one for the North Clackamas County Chamber of Commerce adds $50,000 for a new total contract value of $193,145 funded through state lottery funds.
Any objections? Seeing none.
Okay, 6 is a new one. Approval of a sale and transfer of a remnant parcel of county property adjacent to Southwest Frog Pond Lane. Parcel to Donnie L. Martin for $1,000. No county general funds are involved.
How large is the parcel?
This is, I believe it's .01 acre. Let me get down there.
Wow, that's nothing.
It's not large. This was the item we brought forward in issues on the 12th of October. 0.01 acres. And the very, very end of our section of the packet, it's a small triangular piece on Frog Pond Lane that abuts Mr. Martin's property.
Any further questions or objections? Hearing none.
Great, thank you.
May I also ask, I neglected at the beginning, if these could be.
Everything today is going to this Thursday.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Next, disaster management. 1, approval of a contract with Ash Britt Incorporated for on-call disaster debris removal and disposal services. As an on-call disaster response contract, funding is not identified in advance. General funds may be used, but it will be identified and approved by the board as needed. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners. This is a complementary contract to the one we have for disaster debris monitoring, and this will allow us to respond post-disaster to remove debris quickly when needed.
Any objections or questions regarding this? Seeing none.
2, approval of an amendment to the State Homeland Security Grant Agreement 19214 between Clackamas County and the State of Oregon for shelter trailers. This amendment is the first amendment to this agreement to extend the current agreement for the procurement of 3 additional shelter trailers. The grant is funded through the Oregon Office of Emergency Management. No county general funds are involved.
This extension will allow us to buy the trailers with another grant in the fiscal year 20, so we can buy.
Well, how much is this grant? I don't see a number on there.
$36,300.
That needs to be added to this before it goes to forward.
Okay.
And then what, just for conversation, how will these emergency trailers be used for? By the way, I love it. I mean, this is just wonderful, but can you tell me?
Sure, they will be distributed in the disaster zones.
Okay.
So that each zone.
In one of we have 21 disaster zones, and it will be in one of those with instructions or so forth, and a designated people and/or person up there that knows what to do in the, oh, this is wonderful. Thank you, Daniel.
Okay.
Go.
Yeah. All good. Thanks. Sorry. Thank you, Daniel. Next, Water Environment Services. 1, approval of a contract amendment between Water Environment Services and OTAC for Water Environment Services and Happy Valley Storm System Master Plan. The amendment adds $215,602 for targeted basin planning and expanded capital improvement plan development. The new contract total is $692,601, funded through the Water Environment Services Surface Water Operating Funds. No county general funds are involved.
Thank you, Gary, and good morning, Commissioners. I'm Greg Geist, Director of Water Environment Services. And this was an anticipated amendment. We are undertaking our first ever storm system master plan. We do master plans for our collection systems and for our facilities. So now we're doing it for our storm system master plan. We knew going into it that we would find things that we needed to further investigate. The bulk of this amendment, you may recall just before my tenure at WES, we sewered, along with the City of Milwaukee, the North Clackamas revitalization area. And so it not only did it not have sewer, sanitary sewer, but it didn't have stormwater either. So this really is taking a deep dive in NCRA and a few other areas so that we can get them adequate service.
Yeah, that's good. Stormwater is really important to the removal of such. Our population is growing. As more cement is paved over, the more standing water we have. Thank you very much. Any other questions for him? Seeing none, thank you, Greg.
Thank you. Transportation and Development, 1, approval of an annual intergovernmental agreement with Metro to implement the fiscal year 2021-2022 annual waste reduction and recycle at work program. This will provide $506,422 in funding to the county for fiscal year 2020-2021. No county general funds are involved.
This is Metro giving us money. To cut to the chase. Basically, it's an IGA that's been approved by the Board of County Commissioners since 1991. And you can see from page 2, those dollars are targeted towards essentially 3 key areas. One is recycling and waste reduction programs, including education and resources for residents and community members. The second is recycling and waste reduction programs, technical assistance and outreach that serves businesses and workplaces. And last but not least is supporting to implement local business food scrap collection throughout the area. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but in all honesty, if you have questions, I got to bring Evan up.
How about any objections? Hearing none. You escaped that one.
Great. Number 2, approval of a second amendment to an intergovernmental agreement for provisions of permit processing and building inspection plan review services. Clackamas County's Building Codes Division pays a rate of $57.89 per hour for work performed by the City of Beaverton, and the total dollar amount is based on the hours worked during the time frame of this agreement. Funding is through revenue from fees for permitting and plan reviews. No county general funds are involved.
Thank you so much. So, to simplify this, during the start of COVID, there were some unknowns about development review and how it was going to occur. Essentially, you had the City of Beaverton who was going down, development activity was going down. Ours was being steady or going up. We have connections and resources and relationships with a number of our jurisdictions around the area, and we thought it best practice that we needed support. And with the unknowns about the future, we established an IGA with the City of Beaverton to basically hire technical expertise that was already trained in the position of a permit specialist. This IGA is simply extending that, this amendment is simply extending that an additional year and then allowing us to kind of reassess after that completion of that year if we have to really hire a full-time FTE or not. Commissioner Chair Smith, I know how much you love contract costs, so if you do the math on that, assuming the yearly cost, it's going to be somewhere around $120,000 as a loaded cost. So,
okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any objections to this? Seeing none.
3, approval of an amendment with David Evans and Associates for the South End Road at milepost 3.8. Amendment adds $366,982.82 for a new total contract value of $996,024.29, with funding through the Federal Emergency Relief Funds of $329,293.68 and County Road Fund match of 10.27%, which is $37,689.14. No county general funds are involved.
So I know milepost 3.8 at South End Road is near and dear to all your hearts. We talked about it at length last week. This is the wall, the landslide, why it took so long. The wall expanded. We revised the construction component of that. This simply is a revision to an amendment with our current contractor to provide construction engineering services during project construction. The amendment was processed in accordance with all applicable LCRB rules.
Any objections to this? Oh, Mark, you have a question?
Dan, when is this project going to be done?
As I shared with you last time, it's looking to queue up in spring of this year.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any other objections? Hearing none. Gary.
Thank you. So we'll move all these items to this Thursday's business meeting with your approval, Chair.
That's fine.
Great. Thank you.
Just a minute, Commissioner Fisher.
Hey, I just want to say that this was beautiful. Everything was indexed. I could jump all around really quickly. It was awesome, able to follow along. I just had to say that since I'm always like, I'm the one saying, what? I can't see. Where is it?
Thank you for that.
Fantastic.
Technology is a beautiful thing when it works.
Right.
And when it doesn't, it just puts me in orbit just as much as it does anybody. Yes,
so thank you to our staff in county administration and in public and government affairs. They work very, very hard to make that as accessible as possible. So thank you for all the feedback. Commissioners, there are 2 items left on issues that I proposed we just do later this afternoon after the last policy session.
And that was the tolling letter and?
Commissioner Communications.
Oh, yes. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. Good enough. Gary, I need to talk to you. I'll come to your office.